Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Console Log. Yes, this is the Console Log. You may have noticed that there is a few things different behind me, namely what you see behind me. I'm trying out a different a different area of my apartment to see if it's a little bit more easy for me to film, because now I have a baby and he competes for the room in there. So if I have a dedicated space that I can just kind of relax and do my thing, then these episodes can be all the better for them. This is episode number 37, the week of May 21st through May 27th. I really enjoyed this week. There's a lot of really cool things happened this past week. The TC39 happened this past week. There's a new React release this week, and I want to tell you about these things right now. So let's begin what you like to call, and I like to call, episode number 37. So yes, as mentioned, the TC39, this is the group of people who meet to talk about how to change, modify, and extend the language of JavaScript, which you, me, and Dupree like to code with. They met, they had their main meeting this past week, and that's where a lot of crap goes down, because that's where they actually talk about things that they actually want to move forward with, things they want to actually axe, or things they actually want to modify. The first really exciting. I guess it's exciting. It's nice to have a resolution. You might have remembered in a previous episode I was talking about this thing called SmooshGate, where they wanted to add a new prototype method to the array prototype, flatten, and there's an issue where there was a previous library in the past called MooTools that actually had a naming conflict. Long story short, they couldn't use the word flatten as the prototype method name. Well, that issue is resolved via, instead of having it be .flatten and .flatten map, it's now going to be .flat and .flat map. So less characters for us to type. It's going to be a little bit of a pain because we're going between different languages. You're going to be used to saying .flatten, and in JavaScript it's going to be .flat, but at least the web isn't broken. And one of my favorite proposals actually made it to the final stage, stage 4 this past week. That means that it's actually going to be included in JavaScript proper for the 2019, I guess, specification, and that is the ability to have optional catch bindings. So right now, if you have to write a try catch, you don't actually want to use that error object. You still have to add it in there somewhere. JavaScript requires you to have that in there. This new proposal that is now going to be, it's a part of JavaScript coming next year, is that this catch binding is now optional. So you can actually write now instead try catch with no argument. So that's useful. So if you have a couple characters, we actually don't need to care about that at all. I'm excited about that one because who loves saving characters? Now I have less things to do in try catch. I don't have to type flatten, I can just type flat. Oh, what will they think of next? And speaking about things to do next and less characters, the proposal to add the ability to do a top level await was moved to stage 2. So you might be aware of async await to allow you to write asynchronous code in a synchronous manner. Whereas the problem right now is if you want to do a wait in the top level of the module, that being outside of an async function, you can't. It's illegal. You will be killed on sight. But there's a proposal going into the process about actually making it possible to have a top level await. And there's semantics around what the behavior of this will be, but it's moving forward in the process, meaning that if you actually are a node developer, and you always had to have a entry function when you're actually doing the startup of your application, like, waiting for a database connection or waiting for some asynchronous thing to happen, you now don't have to actually have like a wrapper function to get things started out the gate. So again, less characters, even though I'm a character. And the last thing I want to tell you about in the past week from the TC39 meeting is one of the more exciting new proposals coming into the TC39 stage process, and that is of pattern matching. And pattern matching, the simplest way of explaining it is a more terse and powerful way of doing a switch statement. If you've ever played around with another language before, you'll know that they have pattern matching, like OCaml, Haskell, others. Essentially, it lets you actually say, for this thing that I have, I want to match on the patterns of its shape. And when this gets more along in the process, I'll do a bigger, deeper dive, but suffice it to say, this is very exciting. It should allow us to actually write much more terser code, again, less characters. If you write Redux reducers, it should actually also help with that, amongst many other things. It was a stage 0, now it's stage 1, so it's still very early days, but it's on its way towards eventually becoming part of JavaScript proper. It's a very functional first paradigm, but one I'm very excited to see. So then let's steer out of TC39 into a little bit more of userland area with Babel, everyone's favorite way to get TC39 things into their actual code bases. A big PR was merged after, I believe, months of work. The ability to actually have private fields working in Babel. And this is, again, a previous TC39 proposal that is now making its way into Babel. That's how these things work nowadays, which is great. But there is now support in Babel Beta 47, I believe. Babel version 7, Beta 47. Yeah, that's a lot of levers. But in any case, when Babel version 7 is final, it'll be there for you to use. But it lets you actually write code like this with actual private methods, and it can actually be transpiled down to browsers today without actually having to have the engine itself supported. Private methods is very cool if you actually want to have, right now if you have a private thing, you usually do like an underscore to say, hey, don't touch this, but you still can touch this because Hammer Time has those baggy pants. But it's in Babel, which is really cool, and you can play with it now if you actually do want to try the Babel 7 beta branch. I also heard noise on the Twitter sphere that Babel version 7 is almost ready for its first RC, which means that stability is around the corner and soon to be in your application. And that's good. So have you ever checked out the actual console log website? Because the technology that powers it is this static site generator called Gatsby.js. It's a React.js based, React.js and I guess GraphQL based static site generator. And it's been open source and it's free. And the big news this past week is that they actually created a company around the open source project, Gatsby Inc. And this is awesome because it's great to see companies that can actually be sustained through open source software. They're saying that this money is going to help build cloud services for Gatsby. So I can imagine dedicated hosting for Gatsby sites. I don't really know what they have in mind, but they did make it clear that even though there's a company now, a commercial company, Gatsby, the project itself, will still remain 100% open source. They also want to do more open source work as well. So, I mean, it's always good to see when you have a success story that you actually make a company around it and just see that just grow bigger and bigger. If you haven't tried Gatsby before, I encourage you to try it out. If you want to open a PR against the console log website, I will happily look it over. And if it's good, I will happily merge it in. Actually, one thing I need is actually pagination on the homepage. If you want to help me out with that, that'd be awesome because I'd love to do a PR with you. And speaking of React.js, because everybody loves React.js, they had a new minor version update this past week, React 16.4.0. The marquee feature of this new release was pointer events. You get my point. It's for use cases in browsers where they actually have support for pointers, where you actually want to touch things correctly and make things nice. There was a small bug fix for get derived state from props, where now it'll actually be called if state and props changes. Before it was just being called if props was being changed. So if you are using 16.3 and up and you are using that lifecycle method, upgrade, make sure your application doesn't break. It shouldn't, it should be fine. Also in the world of React.js, they had a new RC for a new component called the profiler component, which is a way for you to easily get profiling information of your React application. So if you have a certain part of your React application that you're like, well, is this slow? Why is it slow? You can, the proposal is to add this component so you can add it into your React component tree and get information back about how long it took to actually render that part of your React application. So if you have, a newsfeed, let's say on Facebook, you want to actually profile the top status update area and also like the newsfeed itself. Now you can actually have two profilers to actually get information about those two things. That's cool. And then also, we have a birthday boy this past week, and you're right, it's React. It's turning 5. It's been 5 years since React has been open sourced. I have a link to the initial commit of React in the show notes. Go to the website to actually check that out because it's only been 5 years of React, half a decade, so I guess that's actually pretty good. And the life cycle of JS, but that's a pretty good run for their money so far. So happy birthday, React. You're 5 years old. I guess you're off to kindergarten soon. Whew. Well, that was episode 37. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about this new backdrop. If you don't hate it, I like to hear that too, because if I can make this work, that means that I can make these a little bit more relaxed and not stressed out, because who needs stress when you got other stresses? I hope you had a good week of coding, and I am going to be back next week because that's what I do every week. I'm trying to get more intermediate episodes off the ground. It's still hard figuring out how to do that with a baby, because just as much as you have to keep your node modules up to date, I have to keep my baby fed and changed and slept. It's a lot more work to have a baby than it is to make a JavaScript application. No one told me this. I thought it would be just as easy, but no, it's much, much harder. Have a good next week.